if somebody would have told that to the, back then, I don't know, 20-year-old Toto, that would have seemed absolutely impossible.
What changed to allow you to follow this path?
The feeling of winning is just a short moment. It was in the car. Sometimes it happened in the plane after championship. What was your question?
Can't remember. But you do believe in visualization.
I do. I heard someone say, and I find it very funny and at the same time pretty real, to be counting in summers. How many good summers have we left?
Ooh.
What I've seen today, the emotion, the power, the passion, the competence is all there. Just crush them.
So Toto, without thinking too far ahead as to what might be come October, the whatever it is, and the America's Cup's contested, if the team are successful, huge moment for them. I want to take you back a little and ask you, where in your life comes your sort of moment in time? Where's the moment that sort of defined everything else for you?
You know, we mustn't talk too much about when it's won. You just have to internalize it. When were these moments? I think each period of my life, whether it was about with relationships or in my professional life had these moments. But I'm really bad at thinking back what it is. There was one in racing where we won in Austria in 2014. That was the first year where we fought for the championship and actually won. We finished first and second, and the Williams team finished third and fourth. And I was still a shareholder at Williams back in the day, so it was first, second, third, and fourth. And it was in Austria, which had a tremendous emotional component for me because I used to work on that track as an instructor. I tried to race and to make a living, and so I spent many weeks every year driving there. So winning that, and then my journey from teaching there was always back in the car to Vienna, which is a 2-hour drive through the mountains. And so I took the car on that same way back, and I thought that 20 years ago, I drove that road. I could barely make a living for my money. I was dreaming about being a racing driver, knowing that I liked the funds. And here later, 20 years later, I've just been part of a team that finished first. And how crazy that is. And
First, second, third, and fourth.
Yeah. And if somebody would have told that to the, back then, I don't know, 20-year-old Toto, that would have seemed absolutely impossible. But it happened.
And when the checkered flag went and you realized that there was this 1, 2, 3, 4 scenario, how did that make you feel? I mean, it must have been extraordinary.
It was only when I was alone in the car. I was alone in the car on that road that I knew by heart every corner on that motorway. It's when I was alone driving, thinking about this emotion of satisfaction, of content that kicked in.
It's amazing, isn't it, actually, thinking about the journey that got you from there to there. When you were that guy trying to make that living as an instructor, trying to make that work, what changed to allow you to follow this path that led to the 20 years later scenario? What happened?
I think what happened is I hear often young people saying that they cannot imagine, how much success you can have. But I'm always saying it's my 52nd chapter, and it's your 22nd. And doors are going to open, others are going to close. Keep learning, developing, believing in yourself, introspect, what are you good at and what not. Push those things that you think you can succeed. And then eventually you're going to just progress. And this has happened for me. And I would say there's probably 10 episodes in my life that were by themselves important in me, eventually finding my way to Mercedes, or them finding me how it was. And in the same way, all of the winning that happened, the losing that happened, is part of that.
And if you're thinking about how that then paves the way for your journey afterwards, so then the 1, 2, 3, 4s happened. Does that change your thinking in any way moving forward, or does it just sort of validate everything that got you to that moment?
The validation is only a certain moment of satisfaction or contentment.
So that's just fleeting.
That's only a moment.
Yeah.
And then the skepticism of how is this going to go kick in. What's happening next weekend? How are we staying on top of our game to make sure that there is no complacency that's kicking in, and all of those thoughts. But you're either like that or not. So the feeling of winning is just a short moment. It was in the car. Sometimes it happened in the plane after championship. But the moment you touch down and you're back in Europe, it's what are we going to do next year? And what are we going to do in the next race?
Do you always have to be on your own to have those moments where you can just quietly contemplate what's happened and the way forward? Is that really important to you to have those sort of quiet moments? Because you live a crazy hectic life, which demands your attention in so many different ways. How do you prioritize that if that's what you require?
Hello, performance people, listeners. My name is Freddie Carr, and I host a podcast called the Inside Tack, which is a podcast that follows the British America's Cup team, Ineos Britannia, as we get ready for the 37th America's Cup down here in Barcelona. We also follow the youth and the first ever Women's America's Cup. We would love you to like and subscribe to our podcast. Follow us on all your social media channels as we get ready for our sporting challenge of a lifetime.
I think I was lucky enough to share these moments with people that are dear to me. Susie, here in Barcelona, we won our first Grand Prix with Williams, with Balsa Maldonado in 2012, which was incredible for the team and for us. And I remember we stayed overnight because our flight went next day, and we went into a tapas bar here outside. And she said, we've just won our first Grand Prix as team members and shareholders. And that was a moment to share. And I had it with Nikki on the way back from some Grand Prix. I had it with Lewis on numerous occasions where we won championships and races and had those overnight flights back where we had those moments of happiness, put the music on in the cabin and all of these things. So, yeah. Was not only alone, but also I was also able to share it with others.
Yeah, and I suppose that teamwork thing is a thing that isn't naturally related to either this sport, actually, because people think a lot about the sailors on board the boat, but as individuals rather than as a collective group. It's something that Ben's had to adapt to, from being a single sailor to being a team player. That in Formula One is often talked about, isn't it? The drivers being sort of these solo artists, but of course there's such a bigger part to it. And how much more does it mean to share something like a victory, whatever that victory might be, with a team as opposed to just on your own?
I think it's two different feelings. The winning as a team gives you tremendous satisfaction, and I've experienced it from different angles. As a racing driver, on my own in the car, winning with the team. As a rally driver with my co-pilot in the car, which is I had extreme happiness with him in the car. And then being part of a larger organization, doing my job as a team principal and winning races and championships, and that gives a totally different feeling. So I have been lucky enough to have these moments on winning on my own, winning with somebody else, or winning from the management side. And all of them are different, but also very rewarding.
It's interesting. At the beginning, you talked about the fact that we mustn't talk about the winning of this competition. Yeah, that it's not a good idea to do that. Why do you feel that way?
It's a life lesson that I've learned, that you gotta keep things in you, not, talk too much about what could be or couldn't be, but just create that
Why
blueprint.
does that make a difference?
Maybe it's just superstition. Some drivers go in the car from the left side. I've learned that every time when I thought about winning too early, it came otherwise. These situations of 5 laps to the ends, who am I going to send to the podium? Boom, DNF. You're not sending anyone to the podium because you've just lost. And these situations happens because it isn't won until it's won.
How have you learned to curb that? How do you stop that sort of rising up from within you? How have you learned to suppress it?
It's a very active situation. It's coming up and I'm thinking, we've been caught out before. Better not think about it.
But you do believe in visualization.
I do.
And why do you feel that it is and can be so powerful? And in what form has it proved to be the case for you?
I think setting objectives is the single most important thing in your life, at least in a professional life, also private life, but that has a different nuance to it. But you need to be very humble about it. It can come otherwise. And for me, not praising the day before the evening is important.
That's interesting. Okay.
The whole thing when people say you've been so successful, I said, I'm probably over half-time now. I hope so. I don't want it to go too long in my life. But let's have that conversation in 20 years or in 30 years, not now.
So you wouldn't write a memoir now?
No, I had tons of people asking about writing, publicists writing biographies or autobiographies about management style, etc., etc. That is really bad karma, because you could be writing this book about how being successful, and then next year around and the year after and the year after you're not. So it has no value. Do it when I'm 80.
Interestingly, in a world where athletes are constantly looking for that extra sort of moment, that extra day, month, year of their career, if you like. And I look at Ben and I think, how are you doing this? You're sort of 47 years old and you're still doing this on the water. Longevity, how important is that word for you? Is that something you focus on? Is it something you acknowledge? I mean, how do you feel about staying alive for as long as you can in the best possible condition? I
think about Ben, his job is much more complex than just the sailor. He's also the CEO of the team. There's much more responsibility than just sailing, and I think that is the perfect natural progression of a top athlete, to actually stay in the business that he knows best, but add those additional components. What was your question?
Can't remember. That's appalling, isn't it?
The sustainability,
longevity. Like, how much does it matter to you? There's an awful lot of people obsessed right now about staying on the planet for as long as possible and making sure that those years matter, so that you don't get to 80 and feel like you can't pick up a tennis racket and play a game of tennis.
Has no value for me. I think nobody has survived until today. Nobody has survived. It's ending, and you want to have it ending on a hopefully decent, semi-decent way. But I heard someone say, and I find it very funny and at the same time pretty real, to be counting in summers. How many good summers have you left?
Ooh.
I don't know. I have maybe 25, and then I'm going to stop traveling because it becomes a bit painful. So 25, that's, call it 90 days. I got summer is not 90, 60 days. Times 10 is 250, it's 500 days. Not a lot. I mean, you have a lot more.
Well, you've got to think about that memoir that you're also going to write at 80. So you've got to work that into.
When I'm not walking and when I'm not taking an airplane anymore to fly to a holiday destination. So I this is how it continues. Obviously I wish for my family more than myself to stay healthy and have a good life, but things come as they come. It was good until now already.
Finally, final point, message for the team. What would your message be to them as they embark on this so-called challenge of a lifetime?
What I've seen today, the emotion, the power, the passion, the competence is all there. Just crush them.
Visualize it, don't talk about it.
Exactly.
Join us for the Performance People podcast every week for the highs, lows, lessons and stories from people like this lot. Michael Johnson.
Some days what I would see is a person who is a shell of what I used to be.
Eddie Hearn.
We don't operate in a business that's dangerous, but we just operate in one where you've got to sleep with one eye open.
Mo Farah.
It couldn't get any harder than what I've gone through, and at that point I just went for it.
Paula Radcliffe.
You can only control yourself.
Susie Wolff.
And Toto did once liken me to a donkey.
Every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts.